Hi, good
Okay, I have to
morning,
hit.
Carol Canterbury. It's so good to see you. Thank
Good
you.
to see you.
Thank you for offering to do this. And I really don't have anything planned. I just figured we could just talk about all things Sierra Madre because there's probably nobody in Sierra Madre that knows Sierra Madre better than you. So
Well, I got trained by the best
who's that?
between my mother volunteering for everything, and then I got under Judy Webb's guidance when I became a realtor, and the rest is history. But when we first moved here, my dad had a rental house and we moved into it. He worked at JPL, and Tom and I moved in October 13th, 1986, and PJ came October 25th, 1986. So we've been here ever since in our tiny little house, didn't kill anyone, would have been justifiable. And we had Mickey 2 years, 24 months later. And the rest we just have been here forever.
So you've been here like 40 years.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah.
you do, of course, understand that Sierra Madre years are like dog years.
I know I'm not, I'm still a newbie. I understand Tony Moran's going to say something or Judy Webb and say, oh, no, no. But anyway, but we try.
So I was thinking, and I can't remember. I remember when I met Tom, your husband. I don't
Yes.
remember when I met you, but it had to have been 30 years ago or so.
It was a long time ago because when we used to do in the beginning, so in 86, I was working at Albertsons. And I grew up on Old Mill Road, and I went to Blair High. Woohoo! Tried 1 year at Alvernal, didn't take. And I graduated in 77. So I haven't really strayed that far. And then Tom and I met in Simi Valley. And then we got married in 86. And we've just been here ever since. And we started accidentally um, volunteering because we couldn't afford anything. So it was Kathy Childs and Charlie Childs were doing I forget the dinner. It was at St. Rita's. And then I found out if I helped clean up, um, we could go. So that's how that started. And then St. Rita's, it morphed into trying to sit through a mass with PJ, who is very spirited little boy, and Mickey was a newborn. And I ended up, they said, well, he could go to CCD, the Sunday school, but we don't have any room because we need another teacher. And I was like, dang. And so I ended up becoming the kindergarten, the little kid CCD at the 10 o'clock mass. And then I did that for a long time. And that's how I just started, just morphed into it.
So I think, is there anything in Sierra Madre you have not volunteered for?
Um, okay, the volunteer fire department. I always wanted to do it, but I was never on it. I was actually on the committee when we were looking at. I didn't realize. I know I'm going off topic, but I didn't realize basic life support and advanced life support, what a huge difference that was. And I discovered that, I don't remember what year. And I was with John Knowles and I think Todd Conrad, and a couple other people. Oh, George Maurer. And we were looking at the costs of becoming advanced life support instead of saying, oh, Arcadia Methodist is just 3 minutes down the hill and
And,
you're having a heart attack or a seizure.
and when you say the advanced life, you're referring to the ambulance and the EMT service,
Yes.
right?
And that's when we were in danger of losing everything. But then, like, I was listening to Todd's podcast, and the volunteer, you couldn't keep up with it legally, I don't think. And I think there was like a whole bunch of uh it was more difficult, and then trying to keep people on staff that could keep coming and going to all the calls. That was the other problem. They had
Oh,
nowhere, because the rents were expensive. They still are. And housing was very expensive, and it
right, and
still is.
that's back when we had all volunteers,
Yes.
and
And then that's when, and then I forget how it came up, and I don't remember who was on city council at the time, and they started that, uh, getting investigating advanced life support. And we went to different stations, and we heard, we did it took about a year, and it was a lot of meetings, and it was I learned a lot, and how dangerous it is.
right. Yeah,
So,
I believe back then too, in order to be on the volunteer fire department, you had to be either a resident
or
or
work
to
here.
work in town.
And then
And
you had to be at a job that would allow that. I forget, what was that engineering firm? It's on Montecito. The Stats building owns it.
Sierra Engineering,
Yeah. So I think there were people in there, the gentleman in there that worked, and they were able to leave work and do a call and then go back to work.
right, right. Yeah, and that became difficult because rents became so high and housing became somewhat unaffordable for the younger people that would have been able to volunteer, and
Yeah.
it just kind of over years it phased things out, and why we
Yeah.
now.
And you try and fix things. And so I would always, like, if there was an issue on something, you always try and came up with a solution that wouldn't cost the city any money, because I think we're in a lot of trouble right now, but that's a whole nother topic.
We'll address that later. Yeah,
Yeah,
another
it's
podcast.
it's
Yeah.
scary. It's very scary.
Yeah, I think actually, just on a side note, I think the city will be fine. We will probably run a 5-year deficit for 5 years, and then according to the professionals that have looked, it'll level itself back out. So I
I
I
hope so.
I'm thinking we'll be okay in that
Be a
sense.
lot of bake sales.
Exactly. And I think back, especially back when I was a young boy growing up in Sierra Madre, the demographics were much different than they are now. It was very much a blue collar community, maybe one income families, only one automobile in a lot of families. So
Yeah,
we relied heavily on volunteerism. And that really, to me, has always been kind of the heart and soul of Sierra Madre. Uh, it still is alive and well, but it's changed because I think
yeah.
Madre's become more affluent.
Well, the other thing that's happened used to be a 3-day event, and I would take 2 vacation days. At the time then, I wasn't
Uh-oh,
working
I'm losing you.
at Albertsons. I went to go work for the pediatrician's office. I used to take my vacation days. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, you know what? You're
You
breaking up.
froze.
Yeah. Let me see.
Can you
There.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. We can cut that out. So again, I said
Okay.
Sierra Madre used to be more affluent, or is more affluent now than it was then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bathroom. And that's like unheard of now. And so when people are talking about houses, if I try and show a family a three bedroom, 2 bath home, everybody wants like 2,500 square feet, 2,800, 3,000, because they say there's no room in their homes. So, but a lot of the houses here in Sierra Madre, mine is 700 square feet, and you just adapt. And it was kind of like, I guess, kind of how the volunteering is. I started telling you about the monastery, and it used to be a 3-day event, and then it was a 2-day event, and then it was a 1-day event. And I always did the barbecue sandwiches and the hamburgers and hot dog booth. And
Talking about
eventually it
the
just,
fiestas, the monastery
yeah,
fiesta.
and it just went away. And we used to have the Pioneer Days. Judy Webb was behind that. And that has gone away. And in our beloved, I loved it, the Huck Finn Day that was sponsored by the Civic Club. And that's, I don't know if we'll ever get stuff like that back again.
But wasn't
And it
Huck
just
Finn?
makes me sad to think a lot of these volunteerings, the things that we've done, like Todd with his volunteer fire department, the all that's like it's gone.
Well,
And now it's just sort of like you hear us talking about it, but people didn't experience it.
I think the Huck Finn
And
was
Doug
canceled because of COVID.
Hayes used to talk about that.
I'm sorry, say it again.
And then also the fire. So we were trying to bring it back, but with the fire, it got it, obviously everything washed into our settling basins. But like Huck Finn was fun because it was Billy Sullivan and Mark Kennedy. We used, I think, Billy's camper, and the boys used to camp with the dads, and they were the fish police because people were coming over the fence before Huck Finn Day started, and that was their job to protect all these little rugrats running around. But it was stuff like that that was just so much fun. And I think a lot of people are never going to experience it the way we did. Kind
Well,
of feral, but it was fun.
yeah, yeah, kind of feral. Yeah, yeah. Uh, of all your, I mean, like I say, there's probably very little you haven't volunteered for. What has been your favorite?
Well, right now, well, okay. So my favorite thing to love hate was the Wisteria Festival. I was on the chamber for many years, and I retired last year, 20 after Tom died, I retired. And Wisteria, it takes all year to plan. You just keep going and going and going. And people always have the vendors always have ridiculous stories why they couldn't be in 2 months ago and now they're trying to get in the night before. And then that vine, it used to kill me because it would always be, we always had it somewhere around St. Patrick's Day, so middle of March, and it was always on a Sunday. And I swear that vine was either totally perfect 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after. It was never, all my years of doing it. And I think I did it, I don't even remember, it was 2009, 2010 when Susan and I started doing that. And then we also did the winter festival, and that was fun. But again, it starts like in July, planning the festival. And then so when I retired, I went more towards fun things, not so stressful. Because after with Tom, I was like, I was done. And I the events committee, it used to be called the Fourth of July committee, and then that morphed into the events committee, and we help decorate Christmas, and we bring up the menorah that Robert Gerge made, and and then we decorate the downtown, and then Rotary does the what are they called, lamp posts, and they decorate those throughout the town. So I'm having more fun with Fourth of July and Christmas and stuff, the holidays. And so that's the Sierra Madre Events Committee. So we're always trying to raise money for that because our parade, people don't realize how much it really costs to put this thing on. And it's a beast. It's a couple of meetings a month all year round. And then like now we're doing, every couple of weeks we're having another meeting. And but it's like $50,000 to put all this on, and you have to have the insurance, you have to have um, the waivers, people get mad. It's like, oh, we never used to. We used to just get on our bikes and ride in the parade. Well, you can't do that now. Everything's so, because even though we're separate from the city, we have to honor the city because they could be liable if, God forbid, something happens. So anyway, it's just all the lawyers are making a lot of money and not the groups.
So the $50,000, I mean, it's relying on donations and possibly some,
Yes,
and
1000% on donations.
okay, and
So
anybody
we,
that would like to donate, they can go to the Sierra Madre Event Committee website, and I believe
yes.
there's a link for donations.
Oh, yes, positively. And then they can contact any one of us on Instagram, Facebook. It's like Michelle Keith, Lori, and Greg
What are their last
Tortel.
names? So
The
who are the board members?
um myself, Carol Canterbury, Michelle Keith, Todd Conrad, Pete. Oh my God, I forgot his last name. Um, Jim Annis, Lori and Greg Tortel, uh, um, Michelle's sister-in-law. My mind just went blank. I haven't had enough Keith, Connie Keith, Todd Conrad, Russ Meek, of course. We have Melanie Ravis. I'm mispronouncing her name. Ravisic. She went to high school with my little sister. Um, anyway, there's like 14 of us on the board, and then there's about 10 more at large. They come to the meetings and help out, but they don't vote on stuff. So we always have to make sure we have a quorum.
So one of the things that's really iconic about our Fourth of July week is the beer garden. So
Yes.
do you know how was that started? And
Well, okay,
who
on it.
started it?
Were you with me when Billy came up, Billy Sullivan?
What do you mean?
At the Wisteria Festival, Billy was walking around and he was remembering, and it was, I think he said it was in the early 70s. It was Sierra Madre City College. They had a beer garden. They just put it together. They used it, not how it is now. Now you have to have all these fencing and outhouses and in two different entrances, security guards, the whole 9 yards. When Billy did it, and so his dad was obviously still around, and the Sierra Madre City College put on, I believe, the first beer garden. And somewhere Billy has all that info. Doug Hayes, he's the one that you need to get onto this podcast.
Well, and
His garage is
people
a
need
treasure chest.
people
It
need to
is.
people
He, huh?
people need to realize too, if it wasn't for Doug Hayes, we may not still have a Fourth of July parade.
Yeah. Like, well, so Billy was telling me about the first the first beer garden, and then the volunteer firemen, they I believe took over for a while, and then it went into Sierra Madre Little League, and then now I think they call it Sierra Madre sports, because girls softball helps out, and obviously Little League helps out too. But with Doug, he has the best volunteer stories. I don't even think he was on city council yet, and it was sometime in the, I thought, the 80s or the 90s. He found out it was one of the cities to the south. I'll say Temple City. It may not have been Temple City. He found out they were getting rid of all their benches. There was nothing wrong with their benches. They were just getting new ones, and they were benches that were placed throughout the city. So what did Doug do? He went to the Buck. He got some guys. They went in the middle of the night and they put all these park benches all throughout town. So when people were walking through town, they could just sit and plop down, and nobody questioned how these benches came to be. And I believe the last one just went away a couple of years ago, and it was in front of the rec center at 611 East Sierra Madre Boulevard. My dog's barking, sorry.
Yeah. No,
So it's so Doug is like he to me, he's a treasure chest. He has the most incredible collections of Sierra Madre. Everything's categorized, it's labeled, they're in boxes and file cabinets. He can pull out t-shirts, he can pull out the most incredible things. He even found in Sierra Madre, we used to have four different pottery people or companies that made pottery. And that, yes, they were all around like the Montecito corridor, East Montecito. So from Baldwin to Mountain Trail. And he has four different styles in his china cabinet at home of the different pottery. And it was just amazing.
yeah,
And
Doug.
actually, that reminds me of a story. So I was talking to Bud Switzer, and I was with my boss, Rennie Rose, and we were talking to him. And he was, at the time, I had a listing on, the really cool house you can enter from Allegria or from Sturtevant, the giant Tudor. It's right in front of Marianne Sibrel's,
Yeah. Um,
the Stuman's house.
not the old Colvin estate, but the one
The
directly.
one that's like 4 stories, and then the Sumans lived in it for many, many years. So
Yes.
she had a pottery company on East Montecito, and they had a home on, I guess, down towards Coburn, what we would know as Coburn now. And Bud Switzer was saying how she came home one day and she announced that she bought this house. And it was the house that I had listed at the time. And her husband was so mad he would never walk into that house, even though she moved all the kids up there. And he was just furious. And because I was telling Bud, I go, well, because I would told him, he goes, he said something like, is it haunted or have you ever seen anything? And I was like, as a matter of fact, yes. I said, there's a very tall man. He wears like a golf sweater and he pushes up his sleeves. He had plaid pants. He had big gray hair, very tall man, but he would always sit with his arms crossed and he would stand by the back door when I was trying to lock up. And you only had one key that worked and it was going through the basement. So it was like a 4 story house. It was the creepiest thing. But anyway, and two different times this guy shows up and I'm like, dude, I go, I'm just gonna lock the door. You could stay if you want, but he would always stay in the basement. He never went upstairs. And that the house was magnificent. But and so I described him to Bud, and Bud goes, "That's Tim." He goes, "That was my best friend at the time." I was like, "Oh my God."
Okay.
And then Bud went to heaven.
Yeah. Well, you better disclose that if you ever list that house again. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. That's the thing. You can't even say that. Like I tried to do it was so stupid. I wanted to do a walking tour of haunted houses throughout town. I thought it'd be funny. And then I thought, well, maybe we'll do a driving tour or something. But you can't do that because it's a disclosure and people get very, very offended.
Well,
They're not amused.
on a side note, I don't believe in ghosts. However, I was last year. I was in England. I don't know if you knew Patty Talbot, who,
Yes.
yes. So Patty in England lives in a small village and has a home from the 1600s that she's the steward of and doing a remarkable job. And she tells the story how the house is haunted. Now, again, I don't believe in ghosts, but I can tell you what happened. I woke up in the middle of the night. It was about 2 in the morning, and for no reason, the door opened and stayed opened. There was nobody there, and whatever it is what it is. But
It was a ghost.
Perhaps. But you mentioned Doug Hayes's collection, and Doug has probably one of the most thorough paper collections. My understanding, he keeps mostly paper because a lot of the artifacts he will give to me. But he's given me Sierra Madre dairy bottles. I have an old bottle from the pharmacy that has a label on it, poison. I think it's, if I remember, it's arsenic or something like that.
Yeah.
Just incredible artifacts that he's given me over the years. But
Well,
his
Doug's
paper,
the one that told me, he said, Carol, when we go, you, me, him, we're taking all that knowledge in the brain and it's gone. Like we just lost Catherine. Oh God, my mind's going, but Catherine, she used to be on the tree commission. Beautiful woman. She used to hang out at Mary's
not Cat,
Market. Yeah,
Not Kathleen Blanchard.
yes. And she just passed on 420, April 20th.
No,
And but with her, she had so much knowledge of our trees. She was on our tree commission. And she would tell me, because I at the time, remember when the pepper tree fell apart before we redid Kirsten Court,
yeah,
and people were mad because they took it down. And she was saying how all those trees were like accidents. They weren't supposed to be there or last that long. So when those trees, like when there was a branch, and at the time it happened during Winter Village, because Tom was still, he used to be Santa. He did that for about, I think, 10 years. And anyway, and where they were sitting is where the branch fell the next day. But when you looked at the branches, they were all hollow. They were like, there was nothing left holding up those trees. And people were so offended when they took the tree down. It's like the tree is gone. It was hollow. It was a danger.
right. I just want to clarify. I mentioned Kathleen Blanchard, and if it's not
Yeah.
Kathleen Blanchard, I don't want to send some wrong
No, she
information.
was on the tree commission. And she
Okay.
was really pretty lady. She always drank coffee. She would
Yeah.
hang out Mary's Market, and then with when Charlie Kissinger and them were around. And
Well, I'll have to verify that because Kathleen Blanchard, if it's not true, my apologies. So, yeah.
no, it's, yeah, she was on the tree commission.
Yeah.
She was
Okay.
probably on it when you were on it.
I was never on it.
Well, I mean, on city council.
Yeah. Um, so I've noticed too over the years. I mean, all of these volunteer programs that we've had that really are part of our identity. Like you said, the Winter Festival and our the Sunday before the candlelight walk and Fourth of July
Oh,
and
yeah.
all of these things that really rely heavily. And I don't want to get too deep into this right now, but I think the public should be aware that the city, because of the costs, are looking at trying to recapture some of these funds by making the volunteers pay for extra
I
police.
was at that city council meeting. It
And
was it was heartbreaking.
it
We
is.
can't we
It
can't
is.
afford another $18,000 on top of putting on a parade. The candlelight walk, it would be gone because they wanted almost $5,000 to
Right.
cover costs.
And anybody that's watching this, please get involved in that because these are the things, these volunteer programs that define us in Sierra Madre. And if it becomes too expensive for the volunteers to do it, we're going to lose it. And if we lose that, we kind of lose our soul. So
Oh, yeah, like they want to
everybody
take away
stands
the
up.
little league parade, the girls softball parade, um uh anything that had a gathering, it was going to cost a, a, so much money. And it's like, we don't have it.
Right. And so again, that's a current issue, and I hope the public stays involved in that because these are the things that really do define us.
Yeah. And they have to. And my thing is I only found out about this like the day before. the city council meeting. And so it's like we should have been told. I really believe all these people should have been told instead of just telling a few people who kept it to themselves. It's like, no, you tell everybody. I mean, people were very, the art fair, that the
Into the library.
yeah, and yes, and that would have been, they would, what's the point of putting it on if all the costs, $10,000 has to go, or whatever it was. I think it was eight that they predicted would be how much their fees would be back to the city. It's like, well, then what's the point of doing it? And here we are trying to raise money for the library. And, you know, now we feel like what happens if that's the service that gets cut? What if community services get cut?
Well, what's
That's a danger.
it's interesting too in the general public. It's hard for everybody to stay involved and read council reports and read staff reports and go to meetings. Um, but one of the single most important meetings that the city council addresses is the budget. And if you go to
Yes.
one of those meetings, if they have two people in the audience, that's a lot. Um,
Yeah. And
Single most important meeting.
I almost feel like we should set up a coffee table. It's going to be long, it's going to be boring, and have coffee and cookies, and you sit down and you go through line by line with them. And they're going to be doing that, I want to say, in May.
It's coming up very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
we really all should be part of it. And all these young parents, like, they hear all our stories, or like my thing that drives me crazy on Facebook is like, do you remember when? And they'll talk about Reese's Market, where the butcher used to give out a piece of bologna to all the kids and
I remember.
things like that. But it's like, if everybody was using the business, they would still be there. And like Mr. Taylor, Kevin Taylor, he's took over for his dad. He's like just working 7 days a week trying to keep that market going. And it's like things like that. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Right. And that's a good point. I think we need to support local businesses absolutely as much as we can. And it may cost us a little bit more, but in the long run, it's worth it. And it is for
Yeah.
the community. Um, yeah, yeah. One of the things too that I have noticed is now that my grandson is playing Little League at Heasley Field, he's like the fourth consecutive generation in our family to actually play there. Um, but the field is spectacular. I've never
Yeah.
seen it look better. And the
Well,
involvement of the parents, and you look
it's
at
huge.
the
But like
Lisa Steiner
when
now. I
we
mean, everything there is top shelf, which is a good reflection of the volunteer spirit that's being carried over at
so
Heath.
I'll give you an example of how much it's changed. So I'll be 67. PJ, when he was on Little League, he was on the little T-ball team. And then Mickey, of course, was always hanging around. But John Capocia and I, during the summer, had to drag out hoses and the sprinklers to water the field. We didn't have sprinklers then. And then trying to get, so when I worked at the doctor's office, I did the snack bar, I believe, 2 seasons. I took over after Debbie McGee and Jelaine Fisher. And and I had to go from the doctor's office, run to Smart and Final, pick up propane, bring everything up, lug it, because we had the old propane barbecue. We didn't have all the fancy stuff. And we had rickety old, everyone's leftover stuff. And but the sprinklers was the one that would kill me. And there used to be, and we had to paint. I remember one summer it was so hot. John Capocia, he was totally done with my talking, and we we had to paint everything, and I just remember it being so hot and just terrible. Now they have sprinklers, they have the golf cart that you can carry up all your supplies with. We have piped in beautiful barbecue. And by the way, you can still get a $5 cheeseburger from Mr. Taylor's Market. Um, and I believe, actually, today is the first day they're getting, on Saturday, they're getting a new fryer. So there's brand new French fries fryer coming out, and Lisa wants everyone to come and try it out. But you can still get all that for under $10. You get a double cheeseburger, French fries, and it's $10, and it's a great deal. But
When I was a young boy, 8-year-old, where the cooking facilities are now, that wasn't there. It dropped down. There were some telephone poles kind of that made like a 2-foot retaining wall, a little chicken wire fence, and that's where we would park our bicycles. And the field was pretty much nothing but a bunch of gopher holes. And
yeah,
you would see Hal Dapper out there always working, trying to maintain the field, which reminds me, I did reach out to Jeff Dapper, who has agreed he's going to tell this kind of the untold story of how Dapper Field for the Pony and Colt came to be a reality. Very ill. He and I spoke on the phone, and he told me a lot of things that I was totally unaware of. But it was like Jeff and I are the same age, and that became kind of when we were growing up in Heasley Field. Why Hal Dapper started that. But yeah,
yeah.
Heasley Field is amazing. I mean, lights and
Well, Jim Heasley, I don't even know how old he would have been now. I My house, I'm on Victoria Lane, and he was two doors down. So I always say the Heasleys were like my other grandparents. My grandparents were long gone. And Jim Heasley remembers because his dad, that's who Heasley Field is named after, for his father, not for Jim. And Jim remembers, and he told me so many times, and Doc White said it too, that under Heasley Field, there's Model A cars that were buried. There's two or three, and a lot of that area on the side of by the graveyard, at one time it was like it sounds like it was a dump or something.
so there was some, but the dump were now behind Heasley Field between the settling bases were the smaller little baseball diamond. Back in
Yeah,
the,
the T-ball.
yeah, the T-ball. And back in there in one of those settling basins years ago was part of one of the Sierra Madre dairies. And I can remember my boys going back there digging up and finding little pieces of glass and old artifacts back from the dairy days. And if I remember right, when the public works guys, when they become dry, those settling basins, they'll drag it to disrupt the soil so the water can percolate down into the aquifer, but they will still dig up little artifacts from the old days.
Ah,
We used to,
well,
so at the east end of Heasley, there's kind of behind the fences, there's like a little drainage ditch that's still,
yeah.
and all the boys back then, I mean, I'm talking in the 60s, we would go back there and we would catch frogs and bring them home, put them in our aquarium. But yeah, it was a completely different Heasley Field then, and it's much nicer now.
Yeah, you don't have the frogs anymore. When PJ and Mickey were playing, they would still, every now and then, you had to halt a game because there were too many frogs on, and the kids were trying to catch the frogs and not play baseball.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned the cemetery, and that's an interesting uh thing too, because at the east end is you drive up to get to Dapper Field. So you're between the swimming pool and the cemetery. You
Right.
notice there's huge boulders there. And
Yeah.
that was part of an expansion that was the brainchild of George and Yeti. And he had hired Gerald Twiddell, who was, born and raised in
Yeah.
Sierra Madre. And Gerald actually put those rocks, he got boulders from all over, put those rocks there, made this giant retaining wall, backfilled it, and expanded the available plots for the cemetery. They were sold, and that was one of the ways that Georgian Yeti was able to raise money to maintain it, because for years the cemetery was somewhat forgotten and weeds, and it was overgrown and not maintained. And you look at it now, it's wonderful. And
Yeah,
Samino
it's
takes
very,
care of it.
it's beautiful.
Yeah. But these are Gerald Twiddell again. He and Lou Watanabe were the ones that rebuilt the Japanese garden at Sierra Madre Elementary School.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that as a child. There was just little remnants of it, and we'd kind of like, oh, what's that? Nobody really knew until I believe it was sometime in the '90s when Lou and Gerald and the school
Yeah,
they
I think
renovated.
my friend Taylor Cummins, she was a little girl then, and another girl, she was on the fire department, and they remembered hearing the story, and they went and dug it up, and they found it. But do you remember when so much stuff used to happen with just a handshake, and it was just done?
Right.
So things like when Lou, you said Lou Watanabe, when Lou and Bill McKernan, Colleen's uncle, they had gone fishing. And I think Kevin Drolet was part of it. And they had gone fishing in Alaska, came back with all this salmon. And Uncle Bill's like, I want a barbecue. And Lou wanted, I think he might have been in his wheelchair then. He might have had that accident. And so we ended up building a pergola that's there now. We did it with Sierra Madre City College, and it's still there over
That's
there
the
by Heasley Field.
It's
And
Sierra
then they
Vista
did,
Park.
yeah, and then they also did it so with the Japanese garden coming around, that's, I believe, I might be getting all the dates mixed up, but Bill and Lou discovered the kids were sitting in the direct sunlight, and Bill's like, "Oh heck with that!" And he's like, "Come here." He told us, bring a barbecue, hamburgers, hot dogs, and beer and drinks for the kids, and meet us Saturday morning, 8 a.m. And that's what we did, and we ended up building this beautiful, and it's still there, this pergola over where the kids eat lunch, and that way they're not in direct sun, and it's just gorgeous. His
So I
work with Lou's work was unbelievable, and Bill's.
So that structure was probably around 99 or 2000, because I remember Doug Hayes and I helped on that, Hal Burney, Lou, I mean, a whole bunch of people. But it was one of those things where the whole community showed up with hammers and nails and
Yeah,
tools. And I remember too, it was a hot, sunny day. It wore me out. And I've been a guy that had been swinging a hammer, framing houses for 20 years by then, but that was a brutal day. But it was again part of that
you just
vol
shook hands and you did it.
it and those were the same guys that would do the soapbox derby going down the steep
That was so much fun.
Grandview. And we kind of lost that too. Um,
Well, probably, oh God, Mickey was the one. He was on the paper, and he looked like he just looked like a dead body. And I don't even know how old he was. And he went flying down. He hit something and just flew. And then he laid there for to long enough for people to take pictures. And he got up and he did it again. But those kids loved it. But I don't know if liability wise, if we would ever be able to pull that off again.
well, I think Doug Hayes has it. There's a picture of Doug and I and Danny Ostie, and actually I think even Ross Coomans is in the picture, a young
Yeah,
Lou, Uncle Bill, and we all met that morning and moved hay bales all up for protection.
yeah, and that was our protection.
Uh,
Like Billy Trexler, I think, built a car, and my boys were in that. And then
Mo,
Post Alarm, Mark Kennedy had something, Everybody just it just appeared, and they all look basically the same thing. With the soapbox derby, they're all supposed to look the same but have different decorations.
Right. And then, of course, a few ringers, the kids that were like professionals with the $10,000 soapbox, they started coming up,
Yeah, but it
But,
was so much fun. But I don't know if we'd ever get that liability wise.
right. I can remember too, like up in Bailey Canyon, and it would never happen now. But like the boys, if we were too rambunctious, I can remember the parents, telling us, "You boys get your pup tents and your sleeping bag, and you go camping up there tonight or something. You guys need to blow off some energy." And we would go up, hike up the canyon a little bit and have our pup tents and hang out there all night and think it was the coolest thing ever. But
Yeah.
I just don't think the parents would really allow it anymore.
No, it's like even like Huck Finn Day eventually at the towards the end they you could rent a campsite and then everyone paid for I forget how much it was, but it was like, oh my God, this there are a lot of helicopter parents, and then there were ones like me, and I always felt bad. It's like, oh, my kids are feral, but they were there forever, and they were one of the first. We used to have, remember the Yak, the Youth Activity Center? It
The
started
first
off in
one.
the old church.
So let me interrupt you there. This is my recollection how that started.
Bart Doyle.
Bart Doyle and your husband Tom and I were standing on Sierra Madre Boulevard talking, and I don't remember if it was Tom or Bart that said we need to do something like that. Now, had they been talking about it before? I don't know, but
I don't think so.
that's how I remember how that whole yak started. So it was at the Christian Science Church. I think it was,
Right.
which later became affordable housing. And we were able to put it in there. That church was owned by the city then. They had bought it with set aside funds, community redevelopment funds, and turned it into the yak. And it was pretty successful there, I think, because of the location. But
Yeah, but well, the neighbors didn't like it because of the noise. They were
right,
skateboarding and basketball. But that's when I first realized the amount of history. It was in the basement,
sure.
but it was all rotted. It had like flooded. There was a lot of vermin, and everything that you touched in the basement, it just fell apart. It had disintegrated, and nobody took care of stuff like that.
So an interesting piece, because when the city owned that on two separate occasions, I had nominated it as a historical landmark for Sierra Madre, and on both times the city council rejected it. Now, eventually, the developers that turned it into housing, they actually saw the value in keeping that as a historical resource for Sierra Madre, and they voluntarily nominated, and it was approved. But what a lot of people didn't realize in doing my research on that, that was originally built as a Christian Science church, and it was Nathaniel Carter's, our city founder's wife, who was very much involved in the Christian Science movement. And when they moved from back east to Sierra Madre, they brought that faith with them and really expanded it in Sierra Madre. So there's a lot of direct ties to our city's founder and that building, through the Christian Science Church. And it was a building typical, a lot of architectural features that were typical of the very first Christian Science church that was built in the United States. But so fortunately, the owners, the developers that turned it into housing saw the value, and it is now on our list of historical resources.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it looks great. When they and then they got a grant, and that's how the Youth Activity Center got built. It didn't cost like the city money per se, but Bart was able to, or some, I think it was Bart, got the money and we built the youth activity center, which is now the Y.
Right. Yeah, I think that didn't was not as successful as everybody wanted. And that, I believe, was just a matter of location. You know, the kids get out of school, they will be in the downtown area, but to go all the way down to Sierra Vista Park, it was just too
It
far.
didn't work.
It just didn't work. And now remember about that same time, there was the talk of putting in a skateboard park there.
Yes.
And that got a lot of attention and kind of fizzled in the end.
I always thought it would be good in one of the settling basins.
Well, you know, John Worthwine had some ideas doing that. John is a contractor,
Yeah.
and how to do that, but actually to incorporate it in some of the way that the water would flow. There was even so in the city yards there, there's a huge reservoir, and it's underground, but on the top is a large concrete slab, and there was talk of actually building a skate park on top of that. And again, you know, that was received with some mixed ideas because some people thought that it would bring in kind of an unruly bunch of kids. And so, you know, who knows? But that was one of those ideas that just never got the traction to bring it to completion.
Well, it was fun times because actually the boys that worked at for the Yak, like Matt Moran, Ted Sheets, um, I think even Chris's Dan Bell, those guys,
Yeah.
they all worked for at one point with the city, and then the boys, there was a whole bunch of kids with the Yak, and they used to go camping, or they would either like camp out like fish police. By this time now they're like 12ish, 13ish, and then the big boys were obviously, older. And I remember they camped out. They were going to camp out for the fish police. They got there. What they didn't know is Matt Moran was already inside one of the settling basin, and he had on this huge, like a swamp creature costume. So he was like waiting, and then he came up when everybody, and by this time now it's dark. I wasn't there, so I got all hearsay, but there was a lot of screaming and crying because he got up when the boys were standing around looking at the water, looking for the fish. And Matt stood up and just scared the daylights out of them. He did it another time when I went hiking with Teresa Smith and we had all these kids, and we were going to go camping. I had this clever idea. We were going to go up to Sturtevant Camp. And then it was like, okay, maybe if we don't get to Sturtevant, we'll get to Hoagie's. And I had this great idea. What I didn't count on, it was hot. It got really, really dark. There's no lights up at Chantry. And so we tried to camp on the side of one of the, where we could have enough of us, a flat part of the trail. And what we didn't realize, the other big boys were following us. And so when it got really dark, they did it again. They just scared the daylights out of the kids and us. And it was actually very funny. But
Well,
those days are over.
and talking about Matt Moran and the Yak, and Matt, if you
Yeah.
see this, I'm sure you'll remember, and your mama Tony, you remember when Matt got the kids all together and they had their little paint fest.
Well, yeah, but what people don't realize, that rug was so gross. I got a lot of equipment, like pool tables and stuff, from Michael Sizer. And he was able to bring stuff. He had access to it at some church and they didn't want it. So he carried everything over. But like the old rug it was ancient. I remember it, just touching it. It was like, ugh. It was, it had been wet, it got dried, and it was just filthy. And so when Matt did he put 10, it was, in theory, it was a great idea, but he put the tennis balls in paint, and then all the kids threw it, and they painted the walls and the ceiling. But
And
people didn't
pianos and
like
the
that.
TV and the everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember because I was on the council then, and I got a phone call from Doug Hayes. He goes, you need to come down here right now." And I walked in, and John Davidson, who's the city manager, and Doug, and we're like, "Whoa, what?" It looked like somebody had a nuclear bomb and blew up a Dunn Edwards paint supply store inside that place. But it was colorful. So
Yeah, it was kind of pinks and whites.
in
I
green,
think they
orange,
blended
yellow.
colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's I wish I had a picture that I could show on that one.
I know. I don't have anything. I just remember the neighbors hated the noise. I was trying to get uh the bands, the kids, because everybody wanted to have a band. It's like, cool, play. You can play. We'll have band fest. But the neighbors hated it.
Right.
Just hated it more than they hated the basketball court.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think too, and again on that volunteer spirit, if any, when we drive in on Sierra Madre Boulevard at Michelin and we come into town, we see the Sierra Madre sign there, which was a volunteer project by Frank Locatell.
Yeah.
And Frank did all of that. I mean, gorgeous artwork, the masonry, the stone cutting, and then there was a little party afterwards where Lou and Watanabe and Uncle Bill and we all got together and did a planting. We planted all the plants around that, and again, it was just part of an era with it where this volunteer spirit was so alive, and hopefully it'll cycle back through to that extent.
I hope so. I'm trying to figure out how to get the young parents involved. And I understand, they're oop, wait, what did I just do?
You're good.
Okay, I just lost my picture. Um,
Well, you're on mine, so it'll record here.
okay. So, um, what was I saying?
Getting
Oh,
young
so
parents involved.
yes, but I have to figure out how to do it. And but even though I know what they're doing, they're affording $2 million homes and trying to, keep their notes up. But it's very hard to get people involved and to come and
Right.
to do something. And I was always raised, if you're going to complain about something, you have to be ready to do it better than the last person
Yeah.
or to attempt to it.
And I think too, in almost any organization, 10% of the people do 90% of the work. And I just think that's part of the programs. It's
Yeah,
just
well, you look at D and Pat Alcorn. D Alcorn, he was on Search and Rescue, and there was a movie. I keep posting it on YouTube, and I post it on social media, and all these men, it's all the names that you remember, and they were looking. It was called Looking for Billy. It was a little boy, and he might have had uh issues socially, and so but he got lost, and everyone really thought he was gone. And there's D Alcorn, he's on Search and Rescue, and that was in the 70s, and now he's still volunteering for stuff. He and Pat, they're on the events committee, and now it's 2026 and he's still going.
so I remember the search and rescue. So when in the 60s and probably the early 60s, the search and rescue team used bloodhounds for tracking. And my next door neighbor was Don Colbert. He had moved out earlier. His brother Beans, Eugene Colbert, was in town, but Don raised a couple of the bloodhounds, and one Hezekiah. and he would practice with us. We would like go up the street a block or two away and hide, and then he would let the dogs, like with my mom would get clothes out of the clothes hamper, the dogs would sniff it, and then they would track us. And you can hear these bloodhounds, just barking and howling the closer that they got. But
Yeah,
our search and rescue team, they have a huge history in Sierra Madre.
they're amazing. And
Yeah,
then it's still, you still hear the same names, the kids or the grandkids are like my age, and they're still involved in different things.
yeah, yeah. Well, good. Anything else you'd like to add? I mean, we're like a
No,
couple old boomers here talking, but
I know.
yeah,
I just want people to get involved. And I want everyone to feel like this is their town too. And you can take it and embrace it and run with it. If you have ideas, we all these committees all need people. The Civic Club, the Women's Club, Rotary. I think Kiwanis is probably that's that's not around much anymore. And the events committee, we for sure need new blood. So it's like it's good to have new ideas, to have more more ideas, because a lot of us are tired and old and we keep reusing the same thing.
I think it's important too for us older people, us old ones here, that we also have to let go. And
Yeah,
because you know what, the up and comings, they're going to do it differently. They're going to do it to fit what works in their lifestyles, which might, we might look at it and go, oh, that's no good. But as we pass the baton, I think we also have to realize that it's going to be different. And
yeah,
in
it
many
was
cases,
like
it'll be better.
yeah, it was like when I did the wine and jazz walk with Angel Throop, and we were raising money for City of Hope, and I think we did it 7 years, and then it was time for Colleen's committee. She took over. She had the Spiros Foundation, and and it's like it gets time to new blood, and it still goes on. I just don't want anything to go away.
Yeah. Well, God bless you, Carol, I mean, I had, when I spoke with Rod Spears the other day, I said, if Sierra Madre, if we ever had our version of a Mount Rushmore for volunteers, and your face would definitely be one of them up there because, like,
Well,
like I say, you decades of volunteer for our community.
yeah, well, like I said, I think it's really been since '88 when Mickey was born is when it really started, you know, doing more volunteer stuff. But the next place for you to do your another talk is up at you go to the top of Mount Wilson Trail. You know where they park when the search and rescue's there? There's a flat part.
Yes.
You can park there. There's a bench, and it's the most incredible views of our town. And it's just, I never get sick of seeing it, and I love it. And I always usually take a picture looking down, somewhere that sometimes you can even see through Long Beach, you can see the ocean. And if you go high enough up, like almost to first water, and you look to the west, you'll see Malibu Beach. You can see the glistening. It looks like glitter some days.
Well, you're somewhat of a prolific hiker there. I mean, you're up there several times a week. How, in your
Yeah,
opinion, how's it looking? Because those
it
guys,
looks great. Now, technically, I have not gone past where Bob keeps his wheelbarrow. I had between with Tom, I only had like X amount of time I could go up, and that was like my church. And now I just go up because I'm getting stiffer and stiffer. So I usually from my front door to where I turn around is a mile and a half. And then I feel pretty good. So I get 3 miles in and I'm still upright position. But the trail is unbelievable. It is so incredible what they have done. And I think it looks great.
good.
And then, oh, speaking of ghosts, there was this man years ago. in the before Charlie Bell, there was Ambrose, and we actually have a plaque with his name at the beginning of the trail where the across from Lizzie's trail in. There's a water fountain, and you'll see his marker, and then one of Bob's benches. He built a beautiful bench, and if you go up the trail, and was always right around the switchbacks when you're starting to go up to first water, there you would always smell a cigar, and there was no cigar there, and it happened all the time, and usually it was right around on the one of the high rocks, and he was notorious for going up there, having his lunch, smoking a cigar, and then going back to work. And he would carry up it was a, I believe, a pickaxe and a shovel, and that was the equipment that he used. And he did that for years and years, and then he would take a bus home. He lived somewhere, I believe, in either Arcadia or Temple City, but it was another ghost story. So every
Yeah,
now and then, if you smell a cigar, it's Ambrose.
Ambrose. Well, listen, I'll let you go, but please put out the word. You know, what I'd like to accomplish with these podcasts is just to make it all things Sierra Madre. You know, if
Yeah.
just to get the word out, to get information that and anybody, please contact me if you have something of interest that you'd like to get out to the community. Um, and I'll do my best to get it out there. And
Well, the next person you should try and get is Billy Sullivan,
I, you know what, I will. Yeah.
and
'Cause
he's got stories.
I, yeah, I'd like to talk with Billy about that. Yeah. He
Yeah.
does have stories. Great. And again, thank you so much. Thank you for,
Thank
everything
you.
you've done for the community. It just goes on and on and on and on. And
Yeah. It's just kind of what we do.
kind of what we do. Yeah, I think Chris Lowe said she is a volunteer that doesn't know how to say no.
Well,
So
that's the point. Actually, it was um Michael Sizer that said, because he was made Citizen of the Year, and he said it's a curse, Carol. He goes, you could never say no again.
there you go. Yeah. Take the word no out of your dictionary.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
Okay, well, I'll let you go. Have a good weekend, and I'll try this evening, put this all together and get it up online quickly.
All righty.
Okay,
Okay.
take care.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
All right. Bye.